Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight, I have two shocking real reports of Bigfoot sightings to share. First, a teen is out for a hike in South Carolina. He encounters the elusive beast on the trail. And then a young man has a truly frightening and life-changing encounter on an ATV trail right here in Pennsylvania. These are two detailed and descriptive, close-up encounters that you don't want to miss. So hustle up, grab your favorite boots, and let's ride to Bigfoot country.
Number 1. Hey, Tattooed Biker. I wanted to share an encounter I had with Bigfoot when I was just 15 years old, visiting my grandparents up from Miami, Florida. While on a walk through a remote forest section of Lake Cowee, South Carolina at twilight, I saw a very large shape walk up a section from the lake at about a 20% incline, from left to right across a dirt road and into the dense forest on my right. I was maybe 50 yards away when it saw me. The light was very low, but I saw this thing, and it wasn't human at all. It was at least 7 to 8 feet tall and looked to be about 450 pounds. No neck and reddish in color. When I bolted into a panic, this thing, it ran up the hill and then started to run parallel the road on which I was running. And I'll never forget the scream that it let out. The cove was like an amphitheater, but it sounded like a cow and a pig being killed on a rock concert sound system. Afterwards, many people, my pastor among many, indicated that this creature had been seen and heard for many years in this area. I now hold a degree in zoology. Also, one night I was watching Monster Quest, and I heard a Bigfoot scream. When that happened, my girlfriend said I turned completely pale and started to shake. This thing is real, no question about it. Signed, Owen. Number 2. Hey, Tattooed Biker. I've debated whether or not to report my encounter, or to tell anyone at all for that matter, for a pretty long time. I don't know why, but I guess I wanted to keep this experience to myself for a few years, and then it just doesn't seem to matter as far as telling anyone. But now, I realize that all encounters and sightings of these things need to be shared, because they do exist, and people need to know what's really out there. My encounter happened in early June of 2010. I had taken a friend to the Marionville Timberline ATV trails, northeast of Marionville, Pennsylvania, in the Allegheny National Forest, to ride ATVs for the day. Allegheny National Forest covers approximately 515,000 acres, or 800 square miles of protected wilderness in northwest Pennsylvania. The forest is pretty dense in most spots and has many different types of terrain. From my understanding, the Allegheny National Forest is one of the least densely populated areas east of the Mississippi River. Surrounding the forest are more woodlands and even more farm country. The two trail systems that we were riding that weekend join together and make an approximate 60 to 80 mile loop from the northern end down to the bottom, and then back up the other side of the loop. My encounter happened on our return back up, heading north. I remember it had rained very hard the night before and through the early morning because my friend, who was new to ATV riding, didn't bring rain gear. We had to go into town to buy him some cheap gear, and then we headed back up the trail. It rained for the first half hour or so of our ride, and I remember the sun coming out, and it was turning into a really nice day. For those that ride ATVs, they know that the rain makes mud, which is even more fun to ride in than the dust. A few hours into the ride, having stopped and observed some beaver dams, some very old oil wells, a couple of logged out areas where you could see for what seemed like miles, and other cool sights that the forest has to offer, I was getting more in a hurry to get back. It was approaching the end of the day. My buddy was way behind me, so I decided to stop on the trail and just wait for him. I usually don't separate from my buddies when riding, but this part of the trail was an abandoned logging trail, and pretty easy, so I rode ahead to wait for him. He didn't ride fast or dangerous, he sort of just putted, so I knew he was safe, just slow. If he didn't show up soon, I would turn around and go back and look for him. I wasn't sitting that long. I had just taken my helmet off, and that's when I noticed rocks kept hitting the front right side of my ATV. They weren't large rocks, maybe about or just smaller than marble-sized. It took a minute or so before it occurred to me that I was stopped, and those rocks shouldn't be flying through the air and hitting my ATV. I was turning my head towards the right to follow the path of these strange air rocks, as I called them, when my turn stopped, and I noticed this stump-looking thing, which turned out to be a dark figure approximately 70 to 90 feet away. It appeared to be sitting or in a crouching, low position. And then, as I was watching, it stood up into an upright position. I'll never forget how it seemed to pop right up, like it was on a spring, with seemingly no effort. Initially, for some reason, I looked at its hands because I was interested to see what was in its hand, if anything. This thing, it was much, much taller than a normal human. My best guess at this point would be 7.5 feet or so, and it absolutely was not a bear. It was very, very broad at the shoulders, almost freakishly broad. I remember that very well. It was on 2 legs, and I could see its right arm hanging down, which was on the left side because it was facing me. For some reason, I remember wanting to watch its right hand to see if it was armed or what it might be doing. That all seems funny to me now because for some reason I was assuming that whatever this thing was, it was right-handed. It moved its right arm to a slightly bent position, stopping, with its hand in front of it at about its waist. Its left arm stayed hanging to its side. Very long arms, that is. It was all very dark black, almost a shiny black, from head to toe, or as far as I could see to its feet, because it was standing in 1.5 to 2 feet grass. As my eyes made their way up the creature, I could see its head was all black as well. There was no white or lighter color that seemed to stand out at all. Like most animals would have lighter colors on their face. I couldn't see any clear details of the face, as it was all black, but as well it didn't appear to have hair on its face. It appeared to be what looked like black skin, the same color black as its hair, but I could tell it wasn't hair in some spots. I noticed that the eyes were even black, were very, very dark and deep, with a pronounced brow ridge. I could obviously tell it had a face, I just couldn't see any detail of the lips or anything, as it was all the same color. The lips were closed, though, and in a straight line across its face, not open-mouthed or a smile or a frown, just straight lips. The hair was short to medium length and not shaggy. I'd say the hair was on average of maybe 3 to 5 inches long, shorter at the head. It was almost groomed in appearance, but I think it's from the hair being short and thick. At least, that was my impression. Oddly, I didn't notice any mud or dirt on it at all, which seemed odd because it had rained hard the night before and it didn't stop for several hours before this. The trails were very muddy. Almost as soon as my eyes were at its head and face, and I was trying to zoom in and get a better look, it began to leave. It didn't turn and walk away, but rather it stepped straight backwards into the brush and the trees, never taking its eyes away from me. It stayed square to me as it was moving backwards. Now this all happened in the span of no more than 30 seconds, from the time that I noticed the rocks hitting my ATV up until it moved backwards. When I played it over and over in my mind, it feels more like 30 minutes. At this point, an overwhelming fear just filled my mind, and I remember feeling like I shouldn't be in this spot right now. I don't remember shaking in fear or anything like that, but I felt warm and almost like I was going to puke. So I hit the gas and I just took off. I wished now that I wouldn't have just fled, but the feeling that suddenly came over me wasn't anything like something I had experienced before. I had my smartphone camera in my fender bag, and it never once occurred to me to get it out and start videoing or try to take a photo. I honestly just couldn't move for a short period of time. I've been surprised by people walking up on me in the woods, and I've hunted all my life. So animal encounters, even a bear from a distance, doesn't scare or alarm me. I was also in the military for 6 years and actually had the honor to serve as SEAL Team 4. During that time, I had many anxious experiences, as one could imagine. To summarize, I'm pretty observant. I don't have a tendency to overreact, and I don't scare easy. I'm very level-headed and definitely not crazy. I didn't instantly think Bigfoot, as I wasn't a real believer then. At least I doubted their existence in the eastern U.S., and if they existed at all, it was in northwest U.S., Canada, or maybe Alaska. This encounter took my emotions into places that they hadn't been, or at least hadn't been for a long time. It has been going through my head for over 4 years, and I didn't tell anybody except my fiance within the first year after the encounter. Now, quite a few people know that the person I was riding with that day just found out in 2014. I never told him about the story before, but because I couldn't remember if it was springtime or early summer or late summer fall when this happened, I asked him what week if he remembered. When he told me it was springtime, early summer, he naturally asked why, what's up? I told him then what happened. It turns out that he believes in these creatures too. He then realized why I was acting so weird when we finally caught back up with each other. And then on the 2.5-hour truck ride home. Now I wish I would have told him then. Maybe we could have joined together and gone back to look for signs or whatever we could find. Instead, the overwhelming feeling of what the heck was that and I can't tell anybody, they won't believe me anyways, took over, and I just kept it to myself. Nobody has to tell me what I saw or didn't see. I know what I saw. I saw a large, dark figure with hair that could throw rocks very accurately, stand up from within 100 feet of me in a large, dense forest where there aren't any cabins or people just hanging out. I still leave the option open for an extremely large man, larger than anyone I've ever met, in a heavily padded ghillie suit with hair on it, standing about 100 foot from the trail just waiting for someone to stop in that exact spot so he could throw rocks at them and take a chance of getting shot. Now that's being sarcastic, but trying to make truth out of what happened. Of course, that option is slim, but it'll always be there. I didn't walk up to this thing and shake its hand or try and hug it. So being 100% sure it was a Sasquatch just isn't possible. I am at the 99.999% sure, though. What I do know is that a fear like I've not felt in a long time, if ever, took over me for a while. Something told me to go, to move on, and that I shouldn't be there right then. Again, I'm an overly rational person, and this just didn't make sense to me at all. I eventually plan on returning to that general area on ATV and parking the bike and doing some walking. I just need to look around and feel comfortable with that. Ever since my encounter, I just can't put this down. I've been researching around since and came across various online groups that discuss encounters. I want to learn just as much as I can before returning and going looking around, and I want to go armed with more knowledge than I have now. I did finally return to the trail, and I found the area that it happened in. It was strange being there. Some of my biggest questions since learning more about these creatures are, what was it doing there, so close to used ATV trails? And why did it draw my attention to itself? If it hadn't thrown those rocks, I never would have looked. And if it hadn't stood up, I might not have noticed it at all. Someone told me that maybe it was traveling and recently crossed that trail. The reason for rock throwing and drawing attention to it was possibly to draw attention to it on purpose, so my attention wouldn't go to something else nearby, maybe something less able to protect itself. I interpreted that as young ones. That never crossed my mind. Just to realize that one was in the area blew my mind away and made me start thinking differently about what could be out there. Now, there may have been more. I'll never really know that for sure. But it does make sense to that question that's been bugging me. I now wonder if there were young ones close to me. Maybe they were the one throwing the rocks, being mischievous. It's still hard for me to grasp that anything could throw rocks from approximately 90 feet away and hit the same general area so very accurately. If it wanted to harm me, it could have beamed me in the head and I wouldn't be writing this encounter. I've since been researching an area about 25 miles west of this location. I had gone from not caring or thinking about Sasquatch to being a full-blown enthusiast. I even attend conferences now. Now, I'm not looking for any type of notoriety out of this, but I feel that folks need to know about this and that these creatures do actually exist. So I've started sharing my story with anyone who'll listen. Anybody who knows me will tell you that I'm a very honest person. It's one of my strongest qualities. I know there are many made-up and hoax Bigfoot stories out there, but I can assure you that this is not one of them. I wasn't out looking for Bigfoot that day. I didn't ask for this encounter to happen, but it did. And it changed a lot of things about me. I stopped hunting deer, and I haven't hunted since that day. I now cannot put Bigfoot stuff down, and I've even started a Bigfoot book collection with some very old and hard to find autographed Bigfoot books. Now, this doesn't happen to a person overnight unless something happened, something to change them. That day certainly did change me. Thank you for letting me share my story for your channel. Signed, Brian.
And there you have it. 2 real Bigfoot encounter stories from viewers just like you. What are your thoughts on these 2 sightings? I'm eager to read them in the comment section, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have an encounter or maybe an unexplained experience that you'd like to share, just send it to the email address in the description, and well, your story may just end up in a future video. So anyways, thanks so much for riding with me tonight. I really appreciate you. And hey, till next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.